Hi, today is Friday, June 26, 2020, and thanks for joining me. I wanted to touch base with you guys and have an open heart conversation, if you will, about the next part in my process, which is the literal execution of jumping into self employment, right? So, if any of you have a job, something that's provides your income, is reliable, that you depend on, the decision, the actual execution of departing from that and jumping into the unknown, um, is really emotionally stirring. It's very difficult to describe accurately, at least for myself right now, because I've been through the process and my preparation. I've identified all of my fears and concerns, right? All of the questions, um, at least the ones that come to my mind, and I've tried to logically deduce some answers, some responses to that, some justifications. Right, I've identified what I feel like is the validity of my business model, of the market in which I'm entering into. I know for my own personal interest, what I feel like the personal gains are to myself and my life for seeking self-employment, but then actually jumping into those waters is a very different feeling. It's very surreal, being there in that time. So uh, to that point, I've actually kind of broken my down into a two-phase um, process, if you will, of doing that. And what I mean by that is I did have a conversation with my employer in which I've expressed my desire to uh, go into business for myself, what that business would be, the reason I had that conversation, why it was maybe somewhat different than the ones that you would be, is because my business would actually be servicing the one that I work for right now. So I'm looking for a working relationship to come out of that. I was hoping it would be amicable in that I could peacefully depart, but we could also immediately engage in a working relationship, one with the other. So I will admit, I was really timid during all of that, and probably more so than I should have been. I don't think I was as direct as I usually am. I wasn't as confident as I should have been. I was almost, and in hindsight, this took a lot of retrospect for me to realize I was almost asking for permission to do that. Um, and that's because I do have a feeling of concern and loyalty. Not concern like it's going to like turn out bad, but I do have an interest in the benefit of my current place of employment, and I do really appreciate everything that my employers have done for me and the opportunities that I've had while being there and all of those things. And I don't want to see all of that eroded because I made a personal decision to go seek something that I feel like is going to be right, a better fit for myself and my life and my interests and my own pursuits. Because not everybody's very understanding of that decision, and I was very apprehensive of receiving the bad end of maybe what the response of that could have been. So I tiptoed around the subject. I did explain it. I feel like I explained that well, but I wasn't very decisive in my presentation, and I'm almost glad that it happened. That wasn't the ideal way to do it. It probably wasn't the best way to do it, but it was a really integral part of my process and my story, because as I meditated on that experience and the way the conversation went and how I composed myself, I really, it was actually my wife who laid it on me, that she said that my resolve in this decision has to be absolute. And I would agree. And she did a much better job of kind of bringing this home, but she did identify for me, even though I had this, I wasn't willing to support it in the time. But I would agree with this, that my decision to do this does have to be absolute. It's not a matter of, right, there's a sense in which you should do all of the proper planning and preparation. You should this word usually carries a negative connotation, but you should do all of the scheming necessary to set up some securities that you're going to succeed. Whether that's trying to prearrange or establish certain business partners, or secure enough funding for different things, having business plans that hopefully are obtainable, maybe establishing in incremental steps an existing customer base and things like that, because there's security in all of those things, and all of those kind of make your bigger picture more feasible, and it makes your decision a little bit easier. But that doesn't mean that even if you had an ironclad business plan that you're willing to commit to it. And that's kind of what I experienced. And that's what my wife was saying, is that if I'm going to do this, whether people are on board or not, whether it goes over well with my employer or not, whether or not other people are interested in joining in my venture or not, I need to have the absolute, unequivocal, unwavering decision that this is my decision, my interest, and the direction that I'm going to go. The confidence in that is going to instill confidence in whoever I'm engaging with about my business and its success or its prospects and things of that nature, because I'm immediately supporting it. I'm putting myself out there on the line. And I didn't represent that in that conversation. And I realize that now. I was very much almost asking for permission, which isn't the way to go about that. I can see that now. My point is, it's very difficult to have that level of absolutism in your presentation. And I don't even know if that's really a word, but I think you get my point. When you're doing that, your resolve has to be firm. This is my business. This is my model. This is my interest and my intent. This is the direction that I'm going. That doesn't mean that you have to go out and poke people in the eye and saying that in spite of you, I'm going to go do this. But I was very timid in saying, this is what I want to do. This is what I feel like was a better fit for me, is going this direction. I feel like it more closely aligns with my personal interests, but I want to leave on good terms. I put that on a platter and kind of just put it out there, allowing them to make the decision for that. And again, because like I told you, I'm hoping to gain a service relationship out of this, an actual customer out of this. From the recipient's end of that conversation, my own faith in my own business and this decision seemed very weak. And that's because I was concerned about the potentially negative response I would have received from being absolute in this decision. But it also demonstrated a lack of faith I had in myself in this business as well, which I do regret, because I don't lack any faith in myself for this business. But I'm really glad that I had this time, this period, this opportunity of meditation, because it really, especially that conversation with my wife, she said to go any further, to have any other conversation, to do anything else, I need to really resolve that come hell or high water, come good or the bad, right? Because there's risk with this. I'm willing to accept the bad in order to pursue this, which could mean not being a part with my current employer anymore, which can mean maybe my salary is a little bit lower, or maybe it's a little harder to make ends meet in things that maybe you have to change some of your personal budgeting and your personal financing and things like that. You're not going to afford certain luxuries, but is it worth it to you in order to pursue this? Unequivocally, your answer has to be yes if you're going to proceed in this. And so that was a real important, crucial aspect. I knew the answer to that. I already had it. I had when it came to actually having those conversations and executing that decision, I lost my faith in that. Right? That was hard for me. That was really hard. I'd imagine it's going to be hard for everybody. For anyone who's trying to leave their place of employment on good terms, or anyone like me who's trying to have a departure, but you're maintaining a relationship, and that we're working together, but under a different sort of arrangement now that I'm self-employed. You have to lead that conversation. It's your decision, and it impacts your life. right, if your pursuit and interest in your business is not anything other than something that you're trying to obtain for yourself, if it's something that maybe like lines out on paper, right, that it's solid, but it can't be done, that's absolutely not going to work out, because your resolve in that has to be absolute. It has to be clear. It has to have your 110% support, logically, emotionally, everything. Sorry, there's a brief interruption there, but I hope that I'm not rambling. I really am trying to bring to you guys in a summarized version what was a several day and very emotional process of consideration for myself about this decision that I I, I had in theory really contemplated this decision in the terms of what my resolve was for it. Um, and it really brought it home being this close to it that it was a very different sense of evaluation of, is it worth the risk? And if you can answer anything other than yes, and I mean anything, if it is not worth the risk in some capacity to you, then your heart's not behind it. And you need to know that, because I would suggest that if your answer is anything than yes, in any sense, of any part, of any aspect of the risk consideration of, is it worth it, then I probably wouldn't suggest that you pursue it any further. At a minimum, whatever that risk is, you need to cut that out of your business plan. If it is, if the anxiety, the fear, the concern is overwhelming to you, and that's not to say that a degree of those things aren't justified, right? Risk is inherently scary. It should be. But if you don't have that natural sense towards it, you probably don't understand what it is that you're getting into. But the question is it worth it? Not does it exist? Yes, it exists. And if you don't see any risk in your business, you're probably not going to succeed, because I sincerely doubt that that's a viable plan to begin with. But that's like non-objectively my opinion from this perspective. If you can identify the risks and the concern, for myself, it was first and foremost probably a potential for animosity or some kind of tension between myself and my present employer. I know these people personally. I've worked here for a very long time, almost a decade now. I have a high degree of respect and responsibility at this place, and I don't want to see all of that come crumbling down because I made a decision to try and better myself. And they wouldn't see it in those terms. And I don't mean them as if they're bad people, but people who have their investment in myself are not likely going to take it too lightly if I decided to part. And I didn't want to see all of that just be eroded because I wanted to pursue something of my own interest. I definitely didn't want to see that happen in terms of something that wasn't ultimately a success, right? I can identify if things maybe if the market didn't respond the way that you anticipated or that you had projected. If you didn't have all of the immediate whatever those benefits and returns may be, whether that's financial or freedom or a combination thereof, working with different individuals or different industries or things of that nature, if those things aren't realized either immediately or even long term, right, that's a risk. The question is, if you don't have those things, is it still worth it to you? Everything that you lost in order to make this decision, if you lose those and don't gain what is your most optimistic perspective, right, or projection of what you could be, are you still happy that you made that decision? Is that worth it to you? That's a scary question to ask. If you're very serious with yourself, if you truly understand the depth of both of those, the losses and the potential gains, if you take all the losses and none of the gains, if you can really understand the weight of that, if your answer is still yes in light of those things, I would say with enough time, with enough contemplation, with enough consideration, right? If you really can stew on this for a while and it keeps you up at night and you can meditate on it, if your answer on the other side of that process is yes, my heart's still in it, it is something that I want to do, that, right, it goes back to the passion factor. This this draw, this almost natural inclination, this need almost of a pursuit that I take on, that's something that I'm committed and spearheaded towards trying to see realized. Even the prospective success of that is worth the potential losses to me. If you don't have that answer, then I would suggest, as I stated previously, that you seriously reconsider that, because that is a very real possibility. And if that does scare you away from it, maybe that's for the better. But whether you're in that stage presently, if you're kind of following along with my videos and you're one of the like more preparation stages, maybe you've had a soft introduction where you're doing some of this, you've established your business and you're doing some of this work on the side, and you've sort of seen maybe how much market activity and opportunity there is, how much market share maybe you could realize. Maybe the work itself didn't interest you the way that you thought it would, right? This is a very real consideration you need to make and cut some losses now. I know of people who have formed very solid, logically solid, financially solid business plans. They've gone into car washes, right? I'm going to open up a car wash, and because the space is cheap, and I feel like there's a lack of that sort of service in our area, and I think it could really realize some high profits. And then you get into it. Let's say you try it, and you realize that washing other people's cars is not exactly what inherently brings you joy in your life. And I'm talking about small businesses, right? Something that you're intimately involved with. You're going to want to know that before you really execute that decision, before you leave your place of employment, before you lose opportunity in your other steady income streams, and you go and you're washing people's cars out in the hot sun. And I'm not degrading car washes. I'm saying if it's not what lights your fire to see that be as successful as humanly possible, if your entrepreneurial spirit and passion is not completely engulfed in your direction for your car wash, you're in the wrong business. You can lose. Was that risk worth it for you? If your answer is anything other than yes, then I'm going to suggest that maybe you don't pursue that. If you do, and if it pans out for you, your purpose perhaps and your experience is very different than my own. I'm putting my life on the line to make this decision. I have come to the conclusion it is absolutely worth it for me to make this pursuit, and that's why I'm going to follow through with it. And I'm really glad that I've reached this point where I have that absolutism in my mind that this is what I want to do, because I can support this. I know what I want to accomplish, and I know how it's going to benefit not just myself personally in a multitude of different ways. And even if it's not financially realized, there's a lifestyle aspect to this that I'm going to benefit from, that I'm looking forward to that. But I have a personal interest in my industry. There's a service I want to bring forth, and I think there's a benefit that can be derived from that, not just for myself and my customer base, but for the industry as a whole, and I want to see that realized. It is worth it to me to put the risks on the line to pursue that. I know that unequivocally now, and with that, I can absolutely support and defend my decision, which is not going to just, not only does it make me feel better, it makes my wife feel better, that she knows my heart and soul is behind this. If I have employers, they're going to see the level of confidence I have in the direction we're going. I'm going to communicate that very clearly, and it's going to instill confidence in them. My customer base is going to see the same. They're going to know that I have this unwavering commitment of service to them and quality in my product and service to them as well. And that's going to drive benefit. And I believe that's where I'm going to see my success, is absolutely my commitment level to it. So I wanted to kind of recap this experience, what it was for me. I know this has gone on, and I apologize for that, but it's really hard for me to sort of condense the intensity of this and the duration of what it took for me to come to this level in just a few minutes for you guys. But I would really love to hear back from you about your own experience, your own thoughts, your own stage in the process of exactly this. Even if it's just looking back, maybe if you're through this already, but you've been there and you know what I'm talking about and you can relate to it, I would love to hear your story from this, and we'll share it with the community. So, anyways, in closing, I want to thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you for joining me. As always, there's so much more to come. I really genuinely believe this is only going to get more exciting. So please do stick with me. Remember to subscribe in order to keep up with all of this and what's happening, and engage with the others that are a part of this whole process and how it relates to them and how it relates to you. There's a mutual benefit to derive from that. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time.